Hello and welcome, listeners, to the true iteration of That's a Good Card. I'm Ya, and with me is my amazing co-host, Kyle. And he's going to have the challenge of getting me to say, that's a good card. While Kyle will be doing the convincing, I'll be playing the devil's advocate. Now is also a good time to remind you to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us. Thank you so much if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Leave a comment down below, give us a 5-star rating, and then please tell your friends to listen to us over the holiday season. We have over 45 episodes, and we would love for them to learn a little bit more about what a good card in cEDH is all about. Also, don't forget to stay tuned for our favorite closing segment, That's a Good Card? ? All right, Kyle, let's get started.
All right, yeah. Today we got a fun one, recommended to us by one of our YouTube commenters, actually multiple YouTube commenters, so shout out Carto1719, as well as InfinityRift, for recommending Savage Summoning. Savage Summoning is a instant green spell. It costs 1 green pip, and it reads, Savage Summoning can't be countered. The next creature card you cast this turn can be cast as though it had flash. That spell can't be countered. That creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So let's talk about where we are seeing Savage Summoning in cEDH, because it's a pretty damn fringe card. And what's fun is that the comments, so the YouTube comments, this was actually commented, it's been deep in the bank. And it was commented, our very first request for this card was on Quicken, our episode on that card, which turns sorceries into flash speed abilities. So I think it's funny that immediately many people who were fans of Quicken thought of Savage Summoning as something that's also in a similar vein. So let's talk about where we see it. Currently, cEDH Analytics has this in 48 lists, which is not a lot. So not the lowest that we've done, but it's on the lower end for sure.
Not at all.
And, there's a couple of reasons for this. One, green is just pretty underrepresented in cEDH. So a green creature-based, not cantrip, but instant spell is something that we don't see very often. The only runs we really see consistently are like the Veils and maybe like an LQR or Worldly Tutor. Yeah, that's a really strong one. So there's not a lot of green 1-pip instants that we see in the format in general. And I think that the reason this hasn't been highlighted so much is because, generally speaking, at least as long as I've been playing cEDH, there hasn't really been a big emphasis on creature-based wins and creature-based strategies. There's been, a good representation of it, but I would never say that the meta has been dominated by those until maybe now. So the list that we're seeing this in, of those 48 entries, there's a handful of TNT lists, and then Shalai and Halar, and there's not a lot after that. So I think that this is not seen in a ton of lists, and definitely not seen in the 4 or 5 color piles, but maybe it should be. I did notice that from the Shalai and Halar lists, there was one recent list that got a singular win in a big field tournament in October, so we got that going for us. So it is capable of getting a win, at least. I love that that's our baseline, but it is possible. And the reason that I ended up pulling this gem from months ago that was recommended to us, because, by now, listeners, I'm sure we get a lot of requests for cards, and I have a large running list of these cards and how many people have recommended them. And then, if there's not something I really want to bring right away, I'll go by, what many people are asking for. That's kind of how I make my decisions. Yeah, you're a loose cannon. I don't know how you get yours. You gotta just do whatever.
I asked people.
Okay, yeah.
I asked around a little bit.
There's probably a little less structure, but anyway. This is a great time to pause. If you're interested in recommending a card to us for our podcast, please comment in the YouTube comments. This is a YouTube comment from a random stranger, so it's possible to get your card on here. Just go ahead and post a comment below. Anyway, I think that why this card kind of popped up on my radar is because as my Corvold list has been evolving, I've become super reliant on certain creatures to win the game. One of them being the Warren Soultrader Chatterfang combo, which I'll talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that this really caught my eye because I started thinking to myself, like, damn, the first piece of that combo, of this dual creature combo, would never get countered. But the second one was catch and force of wills. So I think that it's, because, just one piece is no big deal, but the second one is a huge deal. So I started thinking about Savage Summoning. But anyway, before I start getting more into that, let's just go into the points. Because otherwise I'm just going to start rambling. Did you have any thoughts before I get into the points, actually? Did you have any thoughts regarding where we're seeing this list? Is this kind of what your expectations were when we first looked into this card?
I'm a little surprised I don't see it as much in a Tymna Thrasios, right? I saw a few, right?
Yeah,
like
there's a couple.
But I'm kind of curious. Like, the more I think about this card, the more interesting it is. So I'm really interested in hearing what you say. I think there's definitely space for it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Let's get into my points. So the first point is that flash speed, so hot right now. That's all the rage these days. So whether it's Born Upon the Wind or the Surfing Otter, that I actually, Valley Floodcaller, is that what it's called? Okay, I do know what it's called, but I just call it Surfing Otter every single time because I think it's cute. And, surfing otters are cute.
It is.
So it's just all the rage right now. Everybody's trying to win at instant speed. There's a reason that these cards are now instantly become staples in the format. It's like the second it got Born Upon the Wind got printed in the Lord of the Rings set, it became a staple. The second the Surfing Otter got printed, it became a staple. Now, did we see that with Savage Summoning, which came out a long time ago? No. But I think this is one of those cards that has been long forgotten. I think that this is a card that many people should be aware of, and it's probably seen a lot in, more high-powered stuff. But with where the meta is currently, with creature-based combos being so potent, I think that it's cool to see another enabler or another piece of support for those kinds of lines. And that kind of gets into my second point, which is that the creature-based combos are just on the rise in general. So, I already brought up the one, Warren Soultrader and Chatterfang. That combo is super potent and really difficult to stop just because you're going to get those infinite amounts of sack triggers. So a lot of times it kind of just depends on the list of which kind of list you're playing, whether you're in Golgari or Jund or whatever. But you're going to be making a bunch of mana off of it and potentially even winning the game if you have another enabler like a Zulaport, Cutthroat, or a Blood Artist effect as a third piece of that. You just straight up win. So that combo I've been seeing more and more of. Hazel's Brewmaster being another combo that's super potent and able to be, that's a good card. So we've reviewed this, and I'm sure if you've listened to our podcast before, you know that Hazel's Brewmaster is just an incredible, incredible card. But other than those two, there's other like commander-based win lines, so you can use this to cast your commander at instant speed and make that commander uncounterable. So if your win con is through Kinnan, and let's say, something that's kind of fun, let's say that there's a Drannith on the board. You're waiting for somebody else to remove that Drannith, right, on their turn, and then you're able to cast Savage Summoning, which can't be countered, and then cast your commander on their turn and effectively use that to win the game. So unless somebody is expecting you to just straight up have the nuts, have Born Upon the Wind, right? Maybe even in this world, you've already cast Born Upon the Wind this game, it's in the bin, so somebody feels like they're free and clear to remove that Drannith, right? This card allows you to get around that. So I really like this card specifically with commanders that, are part of the win con, because you can kind of just gotcha somebody with your commander at a time where someone wouldn't expect that to be the case. So whether you're winning through your commander or you're winning through a creature-based combo line, Savage Summoning, it's got some legs, that's for sure. And another point, just to support this point, there's a reason that Delighted Halfling became such a staple. The ability to make something that's really important, a legendary creature, uncounterable is huge. Same with Cavern of Souls for those, commander-centric decks specifically.
Yeah.
Those ones absolutely love Cavern of Souls because your commander is so important that it doesn't get countered. So that's my second point, is just the creature combos are on the rise, and potentially combos with your commander and super fun stuff with Drannith being removed. You get what I'm trying to say. And were there any more creature-based combos that you've been seeing recently, in particular?
I think you mentioned all the like really popular ones.
I've been seeing Derevi stuff too, and like Emil stuff.
Yeah.
So there's some like Emil, Derevi, Fabro Elder, something along those lines that you can get these tricky infinite mana creature combos with as well. I don't see those in my pod as much, but I know that those exist. Overall, I feel like those are kind of the win-con creatures. But then there's also the ones that we haven't really talked about that are like pseudo win-con creatures, something like a Seedboard Muse in a Kinnan, or like a Tide Spout Tyrant in a Kinnan, like those kind of creatures. Like obviously this, you know, you don't need this card to cast Hullbreaker Horror, but that's like another one that's like the same vein. And the reason that Hullbreaker Horror is so damn good is because it has flash and it can't be countered, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So just like this card, it's like you're turning your Tidespout Tyrant into a Hullbreaker Horror. You're turning your Seedboard Muse into a Hullbreaker Horror in that sense, where now you're able to cast something that... Because like those cards don't always instantly win you the game, you know? It's like... Seedboard Muse won't instantly win a Kinnan player the game, but it puts them in a position where they're like, probably gonna. Like we're talking like way in the driver's seat, like 80+%, depending on what the rest of their board looks like. So I don't consider those to be, you know, creature-based win cons, but at the same time, like that's a creature-based win con. Like Seedboard Muse is a win condition for Kinnan. I don't care what you say. All the Kinnan players will probably be like, no, it's not that good. It's not actually that good. Please don't counter it. Yeah. But like that, it's disgusting how good that is in that deck.
No, it's so good. No, for sure.
Cool. So that's my second point, is just the creature-based combos and winning through creatures is just on the up and up.
Absolutely.
My third point is not necessarily a creature-based combo, but the reason that I think that this card should see more play is specifically because it augments the best win condition in cEDH. You can create a flash speed, uncounterable Thassa's Oracle. And that right there, in anything that's Sultai Plus, is why you play this card. And not only is it flash speed, but like I said, uncounterable. And I think that this matters more than people think for this specific combo, because with the recent bans, they're not even recent anymore, but ever since the bans, there have been more and more non-blue fringe lists. At least that's how my meta has developed. There's a lot of non-blue stuff floating around. Like I'm seeing like green, white, Sisay. There's a lot of different things. So what that means is that a lot of those fringe decks are more reliant on things like REB, Red Elemental Blast, and Pyroblast to be able to stop Thassa's Oracle wins. So being able to tell a mono red player, like, hey, you have zero way to stop my Thassa's Oracle win right now, or being able to tell the Naya player, the Boros player, whatever, like you have no way to stop this Thassa's Oracle win, is pretty incredible. I absolutely think that this card should be an automatically testing card in any list that's Sultai Plus that runs Thassa's Demonic solely for that purpose. Like, it's if not even better than Born Upon the Wind at that point in time, if you have the combo in hand. If you have the combo already, you've drawn your 15 cards off Ristic, you're just sitting there waiting, I would rather have a Savage Summoning at that point than a Born Upon the Wind, because it's just more protection. If you're going specifically for that Thassa's Demonic Consultation win line, or Thassa's Tainted Pact win line. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's really hot. I think that's a really powerful point, right? Like to be able to kind of like just on top of somebody else's win, be able to play this out. You now know it's not going to be counterable. It's not going to be, it can't be countered. And so you know for sure, at least not for sure, but you're pretty strong like that Thassa's going to come out, right? And if it leaves you a weird world where like you can go, hey, I'm going to Tainted Pact, and everybody's like, oh no, like this sucks. Like Kyle has to Tainted Pact, right? And it's like, okay, I'm going to
go all the way down
this or that. Go all the way down. Darn it. I guess, man, I didn't hit it. Savage Summon.
Yep, Thassa's Oracle. Boom, gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Right? Like there is a world. I'm going to be so pissed. Hey, everybody, listen. I don't think this card's this good. I don't think you should play this card. Please don't play this card.
Whoa, no, propaganda. No.
Especially in your Tymna Thrasios list. Like, because I think in a Tymna Thrasios list, like, I'm not sure how tight those lists are. I don't think I think there's wiggle room in those lists right now. And so I think this... Oof,
it's hot.
Man, that would be really hot.
It's hot.
Be really hot.
And look, I'm going to probably piss off a lot of the Tymna Thrasios players because this is the same sentiment. And for those of you who have listened to this pod since the beginning, I'm sorry, but your good stuff pile lists are not lean. There is so much wiggle room for you to make changes to good stuff pile lists. Those are the lists that have the most room. You can interchange cards. Yes, you have access to all these good cards, so you should, I have to play this card. I have to play this card. I have to play this card. Guess what? You don't. All of these, because you have access to all these cards, everything is at this elevated level where the benefit from finding beneficial interactions in those colors outweighs these cards in a vacuum that you think are staples. You can remove a quote-unquote staple if it means that your deck is functioning better. And I think that this is one of those cards, and I'm not saying that this is like an instant, remove a staple for this card. I'm not saying that. This is more of a conversation about deck building in general, and I think that people have this this stagnated feeling. I was actually just talking to Eric Taylor, the Mad King Corvold player, about a new Japanese Corvold list, and it all comes back to Corvold. I know, people. If you don't play Corvold, I'm sorry, but it all comes back to that, because that's what I brew most. But we saw this Japanese landfall Corvold list that did really well, and it put me in a mental pretzel, because it didn't include a lot of cards that are considered to be staples in Jund, right? So just talking with Eric about that, there were some cards that we did feel like were absolute staples that had to be in the deck no matter what. One of them being Lion's Eye Diamond. The Japanese list was not playing Lion's Eye Diamond when they were on 6 and Underworld Breach, and to me and to Eric at the same time, we were like, okay, yeah, the list should be on Lion's Eye Diamond. But there's other things that the list wasn't on that I kind of felt like free from not playing them. I looked at it and I was like, wow, that's an actual cuttable card. I never thought it was, but it is. And I think that is the kind of freeing mentality that you have to have when you're brewing a good stuff pile like TNT as well.
Yeah.
Just because you think this card is absolutely uncuttable, it doesn't mean it is, right? If you're sitting there looking at your Flusterstorm and you're like, this card is so good, this is the best counter in a big heavy counter war, it's so good. Is your deck still going to function if you don't have a Flusterstorm in it, even though it's considered a staple? Yeah, it will. It's like the list is still going to function. It just depends on if you're replacing it with something that's going to give a better synergy or do a better job in the deck. But anyway, super huge tangent. But but anyway, to your point, yes, I think TNT lists can test this card without breaking their mind palace of the perfect brewing deck list. Yeah.
Do you have any other points for this card?
No, I mean, like, I was thinking about adding some sort of fun point, and there's a lot of fun interactions that you can do, because I think giving creatures in general flash is just really fun. I do think it's kind of cool that it, because it's like a 1/2 with a big creature, like a Seedborn Muse or Tidespout Tyrant type of thing, it does get around Mindbreak Trap a lot of times. And I also was thinking about this idea of, okay, there's some turns where I want to play my big value commander, like Corvold, right? But I know I'm just going to play the commander and pass, because I'll only have like 1 mana available. So there's like a super interesting world where I actually don't play Corvold on my turn if I have Savage Summoning in 6 mana exactly. And I simply wait until somebody like swings out at me and they're like, oh, he's got nothing. And then I go Savage Summoning, all right, cast Corvold. And they're like, huh? And then I block their Crom or I block whatever and kill it. There's a world where that matters. And it's no skin off my back, because I wasn't going to do anything with my commander anyway, right? So I can cast this, and maybe for a commander, and I'm not sure if there are any, because I was thinking about this, maybe for a commander that, it needs to be able to activate some sort of tap ability, so like you're waiting to cast it until the person's turn right before your turn, so you can immediately go to your turn, untap, and then have it without summoning sickness. I don't think there's very many commanders like that, but it's just something to think about, where it kind of gives you the flexibility of not having to cast your big value commander on your turn. And if you're wide open, then you could get somebody really good by just going, surprise, this has flash.
I'm actually surprised you haven't mentioned something I think that is kind of overlooked in this card, right? It is the last ability, right? You spent like no time talking about it because I think you and I both read this and you go, okay, the last part again reads, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah.
Which is a throwaway part of the card, except a Uncounterable Esper Sentinel. Yeah, it's a value thing. You're probably not going to want to, but there's a world where now that thing comes in with a +1/+1, and now people will have to play 2, right? And it's a little harder to remove to an Orcish Bowmaster than not, right? Now, paying 2, people will pay the 1. I almost guarantee you almost nobody's going to pay the 2, right?
Yeah.
And if they do, you're so fine with that. They're paying 2, right, to cast their spell.
Yeah.
And actually,
that's a good point. No, I was just going to say that's like a really good point. I think it's kind of funny to be able to just like cast an Esper. Like if you know you look at the pod and you're like, okay, there's 4 grindy lists. We're going to lock in for this game.
We're locked in. Having
a turn 1 2/2 Esper Sentinel is like, it's not nothing. It's pretty good.
It's kind of, yeah. That's not bad. And then there is a world where I think a Sisse list would not be upset to have to cast this before they cast their own Sisse. Right?
Yeah.
Because now Sisse comes in with a +1/+1, so she's already 3 power. So she's immediately coming out and looking for 2 and less, right?
Yeah. Or make your Bloom Tender a little thicker. Because Bloom Tender's a 1/1.
Right. Something
but it's
like
so
that.
important, right? Where it's like you got to keep that thing alive, so it's a lot more difficult to kill it. There's definitely some importance to that. It's
utility.
There's utility. Yeah. It's super fringe, but I think there is utility. Like you can also add, hey, guess what? You're getting a 1/1 counter on it. If you have Agatha's Soul Cauldron already on the board, you're immediately giving something, some sort of ability potentially. So there's some Agatha's synergy there. And I know a lot of TNT lists run Agatha's as well. So it's interesting. It's not nothing. We like to say that.
It's not nothing.
We should put a t-shirt. That's a good card. And then on the back, that's not nothing.
That's not nothing.
All the fringe
the
points.
Orzhov podcast.
Yeah, listeners, we're actually recording on Monday instead of Tuesday. We normally do our recordings on Tuesdays, but we switched it up to Monday, and we just released our last episode on Drana and Linvala. And if you haven't listened to that, check it out below. But we were just talking about how we just kept bringing Orzhov cards, but we did the thing. We brought a green card. We haven't brought a green card in a while, right? It's been a couple of episodes.
It's been a hot moment.
Yeah. So, but anyway, those are our last fringe points. Yeah, it's time for you to dig into this card. What are the downsides to Savage Summoning?
One of the first points I brought up is more of like a cautionary tale, but I think it's a good point still, is that you still have to be careful, right? I think for the most part, like you said, you're only going to cast this and then the creature. But, I think you described a couple scenarios where you cast this, you cast your creature, and then you want to make sure you do it in that order. But then if the third spell, right, like you do open yourself up for a mind break trap, so you're not completely safe. Your sequencing really matters here, and if it's been a long day, like that's something you just really want to be mindful of, is that mind break trap is definitely there. It's a real thing, and that's why earlier I kind of even suggested like you do a reverse, Oracle like line, right? Like,
but even then, the mind break trap's gonna be on. So what you do is you reverse with a Tainted Pact, leave yourself 2 cards, go, I messed up, pass the turn. In the next person's upkeep, you got Savage Summoning. That's his Oracle.
Nobody sees that.
Nobody sees you leave an extra card or 2 just to be like, oh man, I'm not gonna instantly die if this doesn't happen, and then you just pass, or you just, I guess you could put on like the acting performance of the Sentry, go all the way down to nothing, and then go, oh, I'm just gonna get Mind Break Trap. I think I just lose. All right.
Yeah.
Or just go, I messed up.
I guess I'll just pass.
Yeah, or you just like start raging. Or like, let's say you pretend like you were looking for something, like, and you only have like 10 cards left in the deck, and you're like, wow, I can't win anymore. Yeah, I'm gonna exile my whole library. Pass.
and then in the upkeep, you're like, oh wait, it was in my hand the whole time. Savage Summoning. Thassa's
no, you don't have to say that. You're just putting on the. You're just putting on that. You just go, man, this sucks. Pass. That would be crazy if you pulled that off. That would be an incredible heist. All right, sorry.
But like I said, so
go
you
back
still
to your
just want to be
downsides.
careful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. You just still want to be careful. You do still want to be careful. You don't want to see this is uncounterable.
You're adding to that storm count. It adds to Flusterstorm
and
too.
There's a world, right? And there's a world where this can just get bounced, right? I don't know what world that would be in, but like a Hullbreaker Horror can just bounce this card back to your hand, and the other spell, whatever it may be. So just things to kind of be mindful of. There are still pitfalls that you can fall into, but I guess that's less of a downside and more of a PSA. My second point is that I think there are still times that this can kind of be a dead card.
Yeah.
It really depends on your creature density and the impactful number of creature spells that you're running.
Sure.
I think that people are going to fall in the trap of seeing the spell, seeing it in their hand, and they can potentially just hold on to it for too long. Mm-hmm. That's why in your positives, I kind of wanted to just make mention of like, hey, look, that +1/+1 isn't nothing on an Esper Sentinel, right? That thing matters, right?
Yeah.
Hell, even on your own Orcish Bowmaster, make an Orcish Bowmaster uncounterable. I know we're now talking about positives, but
yeah. I mean, it rarely gets countered, but yeah, I see what you mean.
You do want to look at the density of your creatures and like, hey, what am I really trying to protect here?
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a world where you would use this on? Because I pulled up a TNT list and I'm looking at some of the creatures, right? So the density in TNT list is generally anywhere between like 22 and 27 creatures, I would say.
Which is really
good.
Yeah,
it's like pretty high. Yeah. I'm like going through it, like, would you ever use this just to beef up something like, I'm looking at this, I'm just looking at a list right now, like to beef up a Dranith? To make it like a 2/4, bring it out of bolt range. Does that like actually matter? Or like beef?
It's actually kind of
beef up
interesting.
a Grand Abolisher to make it a 3/3, so it doesn't die off of one like Orcish draw, so it's not like pew pew. Or a Kinnan even in the 99. Like, how much does it actually matter that you like slightly increase the booty of some of these like semi-valuable, or not semi-valuable, but like decently valuable creatures?
I think a Dranith that can now easily block a Tymna is not nothing, right? It's actually quite something.
That's true.
Normally a Dranith is just into a Tymna is they bounce off each other, but like a 2-power Dranith, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bitter towards the Dranith. It's a great card. I got stomped by a turn 2 Dranith into my Rakdos. It just hurts, and then now I can't bolt that thing.
Yep.
That sucks.
You know what you still can do with it though? Ghostfire Slice it. The card I hate.
Ghostfire Slice. So good.
Yeah. So it's one of those cards that maybe like the play pattern, it just depends on the play pattern. Like if you have no other creatures in your opening hand and you have the mana to Savage Summoning one of these things just cuz to make it a little beefier, maybe you do. Maybe like would you ever do it to like a Tymna?
Like, don't wait.
Or would you just hold? That's like crazy, right? To just like Savage Summoning the Tymna to make it a little bigger so that you can hit more. You technically lifelink more off of it. But like I don't
depending on where you are in the game, that might matter.
Yeah, how down bad you are.
Yeah.
Or do you just hold? Like I guess it just depends.
I think that this is one of those cards where you may not want to hold for too long, right? And I think that's the whole point is that I'm trying to get at is like, don't just hold this thing for too long, like looking for the ultimate value, right? Like there are potentially a number of like underexplored in a Orcish meta. Like you may just want to just beef up one more thing so that it's not going to die to removal. Like honestly, there was a time where if I wish it was a red card. I know for like a Magda list, right? Mm-hmm. In a Magna list, yeah, I'd play something like this if it was red.
It'd be crazy to be able to instant speed uncounterable Magda to the board. Come on now, that'd be crazy. That would be crazy. But it's an interesting conversation. Sorry, yeah, we kind of went on a tangent of that, but I honestly am going to add to your downsides because of it, because maybe it is kind of a little bit of not a nightmare. It's like a little like what's a small nightmare? Is there a word for that? It's like kind of an annoyance where
restless.
Yeah, you're a little restless with this card because you might be put in a situation where it's like, shit, do I Savage Summoning my opposition agent to make it a little thicker? Like those are the kind of questions that will keep you up at night where you're thinking to yourself like, if the game goes one way and you're like, damn, they had 2 damage to be able to kill that thing. If it just had 1 more bud, it'd be fine. But then on the flip side, if you don't do it, or if you did it rather, and then you draw that Seedborn Muse next, and you're like, damn it, I wish I had a Savage Summoning for that Seedborn Muse. Then you're frustrated, right? So it might be a little bit of a headache. That's a good word for it, to kind of decide when you're playing this card.
And something you just mentioned, I actually didn't write this down, but like all of a sudden you've kind of taxed yourself right now, instead of potentially holding up 3 mana for your, since you said Opposition Agent, right? You're kind of like holding up 4 mana, passing the turn with for 4, right? Which can have a kind of an impact.
Sure, if that's what your plan is, but I don't know if that's ever going to be your plan. Like, I think this card sits dead in hand more often than it is used for like a slight value.
Big gotcha.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, obviously when you're playing this card, there are targeted creatures in your deck that you want to cast this on specifically. So you have to have that.
And that's why I think it could be dead.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it could be dead for sure. But normally my opposition to that is that normally those few cards that you're trying to protect are cards that you're tutoring for anyway. Like, those are the cards in the deck that you are looking for. So it's not like, I don't know, this card's only good if I draw into this card. It's like, no. Every game that you have a Thassa's Oracle in your deck, you should be probably looking for Thassa's Oracle at some point if you're trying to win the game. So I think that it could sit in hand, but it still kind of sits in line for what the game plan of your deck should be doing, as long as it has targets that make sense for it. Like, you built this deck to have creatures that you want to be uncounterable and at flash speed, then those are the ones that you should be looking for.
I agree with that. And my last point, it's pretty simple, is that this potentially seems redundant.
Oh.
Now, yeah, it's not bad to kind of have that level of redundancy, but like, if you're already running Cavern of Souls and a Delighted Halfling, right? And yes, the argument could be that the Delighted Halfling is only for legendary creatures, but like those see a lot of play, and this just feels like potentially just more kind of redundant, and especially when those cards kind of like come down and they have value over multiple turns. Like, turn 1, you're able to get it down, and then it just kind of sits there waiting for you, right? Whereas this kind of potentially takes space up in hand, and now you're like, okay, I already have the Cavern of Souls. I've named the thing I need to name. So there is like a little bit, I'm not sure if there's just too much redundancy, but like that's something I can see people listening to, kind of like wondering, like, do I really need this, a Delighted Halfling and my Cavern of Souls? What do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that the timing aspect of the card is probably the most important. I would probably rank the level of importance of the things that this card provides as being 1, the flash speed is number 1. 2, the uncounterability is the second best thing, and then the 1/1 counter.
On both.
Yeah, and then the 1/1 counter is just kind of whatever. It doesn't really matter. It slightly matters. So I actually see as you're playing this card to give creatures flash. So as the number 1 thing. So I don't think that it's super redundant in a sense that Cavern of Souls and Delighted Halfling cannot give things flash. So they're a different card in that sense. But also at the same time, when you're on these creature-based combos, or really combos in general, it's really hard to be overprotected, if that makes sense. The only time it would feel that way is if you're leaned into it so much that you've lost like the identity of what your deck's going for. So I don't think that if you have a Cavern of Souls, you have a Delighted Halfling, because the thought process is like, okay, if you're on Cavern of Souls, what could you be on instead that makes your life easier? It's like, okay, like a Forbidden Orchard, like something like that can tap for any colors for any things. Yeah, like maybe something along those lines. Like, sure, there's a negative externality to running Cavern of Souls because you could be slightly fixing your mana just a little bit better, right? But I don't think that you run into that issue unless you're really deep down the rabbit hole of like doing too much with your list.
But yeah, that's all I've got here. I think that it's a really interesting card. I think there are some definitely things that you want to consider. But overall, let's move on to the points you think made the most sense for its biggest downside.
Yeah, so I think of the ones that you just listed, I think the biggest downside is the one that we kind of came to together, which is that the headache that it brings of knowing when you should actually use this card, it causes problems. Even in that conversation that we're having, it's like, okay, do you hold it to use it for those specific cards, to hold it for that Hazel's Brewmaster, or hold it for that Thassa's Oracle? Is it really just protection for the wins, or are you going to do it on something like an Esper Sentinel, or do it on something like a Bloom Tender just to make it survive longer, right? Or to enable an Agatha's. There's a lot of things, or just to make sure that your commander actually comes down. For those Kinnan players out there who are like, shit, I just want to play my Kinnan, It's like, and it just keeps getting REB'd every single time I try to play my Kinnan. It's like, if you just want that thing to stick, it sticks. So I think that it's a little bit of a headache in that it might keep you up at night of like, oh, I should have Savage Summoning X, but instead I Savage Summoning Y. It's difficult. The card doesn't play itself. So it can be misconstrued that you're piloting the card wrong when hindsight's 2020 is really what I'm saying. Because I really think there's a big difference between misplaying and then like the making a play, not having the perfect information, and like at that point in time, with the information that you had, you made the right play by Savage Summoning X. Like you can't know that you're going to draw into a better target for it at Y, So you can't beat yourself up for those kinds of things, but it could make your interaction with the card feel bad. But yeah, what point of mine did you like the most? What did you think was the strongest point for testing out Savage Summoning in our cEDH lists?
It's a creature-based meta right now, I think. And the fact that this thing gives its flash, can't be countered, and the next creature spell, the one that you're trying to target, can't be countered. That's something, right?
That's not nothing.
That is really powerful. I do love the thought about being able to play dumb, Tainted Pact away your whole deck, and then
pass, and then just
idea. Yeah. Or an Uncounterable Thassa's Oracle to come on out like after, like at flash speed, on somebody else's turn, like when they're so sure that you're so out of this game that you're not going to impact the game at all.
Yeah.
Like lovely.
And the fact that it costs one less than Born Upon the Wind can actually be relevant. Hear me out. Ready?
Yeah.
Someone is like, well, they could cast Born Upon the Wind and then Thassa's Tainted Pact, and you're sitting there with perfectly 5 mana, and you're like, I would need 6 mana to do that, or you know what I mean, or 5 and you'd need 4.
Yeah,
Sorry, if you're writing Demonic Consultation instead of Tainted Pact, then you say to the table, look, I would need 5 mana to do that. Born Upon the Wind is 2, Thassa's is 2, and Demonic Consultation is 1. That's 5 mana, right? And they go, okay, how much mana do you have? And you're like, 4. And they're, okay, we're good. He's not going to do that. And then boom, Savage Summoning, Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation. They won't see it coming.
Good. So good. So good. Nobody will.
All right, y'all. It's that time. Did we convince you? Is Savage Summoning a good card?
When you brought this to me the other day, I was like, wow, what is Kyle doing? Like, what's he been on?
What do you mean?
After our conversation, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty convinced. Like,
okay. You thought I was tripping.
I thought you were tripping, and I didn't actually think about the Thassa's Oracle until we sat down to talk, and I was like, my gosh, wow,
it's pretty good.
That's the type of trickery I love. Like, is it like a super efficient? No, but is it something I love? And do I think there's a world where you can absolutely get people?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Sure. No one's expecting it. It's in 50 lists in all of the cEDH tournaments, and I think that maybe there's more presence in cEDH that just not in the tournament scene, just in regular cEDH, not the tournament scene. So people might be aware of it, but at the same time, like, it's a big gotcha. Yep. That being said, once you play it once, I bet you your pod will know that you're on Savage Summoning. So you're not going to be able to get your friends twice with this thing. But maybe in a tournament in a wide field where people don't know your list, they don't know who you are, it could be, a big time gotcha. But anyway, all right, say the thing.
That's a good card. Savage Summoning. That's a good card.
Woohoo! We did it, y'all. Thank you. And big shout out to InfinityRift as well as Carto1719 for the recommendation for Savage Summoning. All right, y'all. it is time for our favorite segment. That's a good card, question mark? If you haven't played this game with us before, what we're going to do is I'm going to provide Ya with an obscure Magic card name, and Ya is going to guess everything about this card. Now, listeners, if you want to play along with us, go ahead and pause after I give the name. Go ahead and type out your guess in the comments down below and play along with us. All right, you're going to guess everything about this card, Ya. Color, type, cost, activated abilities, whatever it may have. Art, flavor text. Are you ready for today's card?
Yes, give it to me.
All right, your card is Hornet Harasser.
Hornet Harasser. Absolutely a green card. It's a green card. It is a...
So much confidence.
It is 1 generic pip
And 2 green.
Okay.
It is so 3 costs altogether. It's a
What type is it?
hornet. It's a hornet.
Oh, so it's a creature?
It's a hornet. It's a creature.
Okay.
Yeah, creature.
Creature, hornet?
Wait,
It's a hornet?
creature. Hornet.
The name is Hornet Harasser.
Yeah. Hornet harasser. It is a hornet.
That's right. It's harassing itself.
Yep.
Yeah, it's harassing itself. I'm already too deep into this, so we're going with it. It is a, let's say it's a choo-choo flying.
Okay.
No. Yeah, choo-choo flying.
Okay.
Choo-choo flying. And it has an activation. It's going to be pay a generic and a green pip to activate it.
Do you have to
Tap
it?
Pay a green and then activate and 1 generic.
Tap it.
Hornet Harasser does 1 damage to target creature without flying.
Oh.
Because Magic used to love to do that, like
I see.
Something with flying.
Wait, don't hornets fly? So it's harassing the things
Yeah.
that don't have flying?
Fly. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Wait, so
yeah.
it's a hornet harasser
Yeah.
because it is the actual hornet and it happens to harass things.
yeah.
It's not something that
Yeah.
harasses hornets. Okay.
And the picture is like this guy with like bumps and like mad stings all over his face, and he's just running away from a swarm of hornets.
Okay. But it's not the dude.
He thought he was going to harass them.
Okay.
It's not the dude.
Because it's a hornet. So
He
we're
thought
talking
he
about
was going to harass them. Yeah, it's a hornet. Yeah.
Okay.
And the flavor text is he thought he could get away by jumping into the water, but the hornets are hornets are patient, and they waited.
Wow. So he's the guy running is dripping wet as well. In the art.
For sure. Yeah.
All right.
Draw that.
All right. That was an interesting one. All right, y'all. I hope you made your guesses at home. Hornet Harasser. It is a creature. Congratulations. It is a 2/2. Congratulations. It is a black card.
Black.
Yeah. It is 4 cost. 2 colorless and 2 black pips. So 4 costs for a 2/2.
Okay.
It's a creature, Goblin Shaman. And it reads, when Hornet Harasser is put into a graveyard from play, target creature gets -2/-2 until the end of turn. The flavor text reads, and though she didn't get her honey, Auntie found something far more interesting. Quote, a tale of Auntie Grub. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that flavor text means. Anyway, and then the art is like a little goblin shaman. It's actually kind of cute. Like the goblin's sitting on a rock and then has a stick. And then there's like a bubble. And inside the bubble is like a bunch of hornets. So it looks like this goblin shaman hornet harasser it may be trapping the hornets and it may be harassing the hornets. I can't tell. It's hard to tell if it's like the hornets are the goblin shaman's pet or if the hornets are like, I don't know what team these two are on. I don't know if they're playing for the same team or not. But he did an okay job. This was printed in Lorwyn. You want to guess how much this card costs?
How much? Let me guess. 20 cents.
8 cents. It's a
8
terrible
cents.
card.
Ooh.
I mean, for 4 mana,
Ooh.
it's a 2/2, and
For 4 mana.
when it dies, it does -2/-2. That's terrible. That's just a terrible rate all around, even
Yeah,
for
that's not
Lorwyn
great.
standards.
That's not
Lorwyn was really big into the -/ though, of like that being like some sort of removal. But God, this card is god awful. All right, y'all. I hope you had a better guess than Ya for Hornet Harasser. I hope you enjoy the artwork I'm going to put up on the screen. All right. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode on Savage Summoning. Please direct your attention below to the description where you'll find links to our link tree, as well as all the places that we host our podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Please check out our Patreon, where we post additional Tag C content, as well as our Discord, where we play cEDH a lot. So come join the Discord, hop in, look for some games, and play some cEDH. We generally get games going almost every night. So go ahead and hop in the Discord. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.